She noticed it first in the way the wind kept undoing her hair. Not dramatically, just enough to make her lift a hand again and again, smoothing it back, the same strand returning to her cheek like it belonged there. Marina stood barefoot in the damp sand, shoes abandoned somewhere behind her, the ocean moving in its indifferent rhythm. Someone laughed nearby. A cooler lid thudded closed. The day had already started without asking her permission. It wasn't that she felt unhappy. That was the problem. Nothing was wrong enough to justify the restlessness pressing under her ribs. She shifted her weight, toes sinking slightly, and let her eyes drift. Without intention, she told herself, toward the woman standing a few steps away. Isabelle wasn't doing anything noticeable. She rarely did. She stood with her hands in the pockets of her jacket, shoulders relaxed, gaze fixed on the horizon as if she were reading something written into the water. When she smiled, it was small and private, like she decided something and didn't need to announce it. Marina had clocked her hours earlier, back at the rental house. Not in a way she could defend. Just a quiet awareness, like noticing the position of the sun without looking straight at it. They'd been introduced quickly. Friend of a friend, someone who had joined last minute. Isabelle had offered her name and then stepped back, as if that was all she owed the room. No performance. No apology. Marina remembered thinking absurdly that it felt like standing near a closed door and wondering what was on the other side. Now the group spread loosely across the beach, a soft chaos of towels and voices and half-finished conversations. Someone passed around sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Marina took one without hunger and sat, knees pulled up, listening to the ocean chew at the shore. Isabelle moved closer, not directly toward her, but nearer in the way people do when they're unconsciously aligning themselves. She crouched to pick up a bottle that had tipped over, sand clinging to its mouth. When she straightened, their eyes met for a second too long. There was no smile this time, just recognition. They sat a few feet apart, close enough to share the same stretch of shade cast by nothing at all. Marina unwrapped her sandwich slowly, folding the paper with care she didn't apply to most things. Isabelle drank from the bottle, head tipped back, throat moving in a way that felt strangely intimate to witness. Marina looked away, and immediately irritated with herself. She told herself she was tired, that the year had been heavier than she'd admitted, that she needed rest, not meaning. The thought didn't settle. She listened to the sound of Isabelle setting the bottle down, the soft plastic knock against a rock. The wind lifted again, carrying salt and something green and alive from the cliffside. Marina closed her eyes for a moment and let the smell fill her lungs, grounding herself in the simple fact of being here. When she opened them, Isabelle was watching her, not openly, but without embarrassment either, as if Marina had entered her field of vision and stayed there. "You okay?" Isabelle asked, voice low, almost swallowed by the wind. Marina nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just sun." She gestured vaguely upward, though the clouds had already begun their slow gathering, a dimming she felt more than saw. Isabelle's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "It sneaks up on you." Something about the way she said it made Marina feel seen in a way that had nothing to do with weather. She laughed, short and a little sharp, then looked back toward the ocean as if it might offer instruction. They fell into silence again, the kind that wasn't awkward but wasn't neutral either. It felt weighted, like a pause that had been chosen. Marina's phone buzzed in her bag. She didn't reach for it. She already knew who it would be. The thought of his name arriving on her screen filled her with a familiar, dull ache. An obligation she'd been dragging behind her for months now, quiet and unquestioned. She wondered, suddenly, what it would feel like not to answer. Not today. Not ever. The idea startled her, not because it was new, but because it felt possible in a way it hadn't before. Isabelle shifted, brushing sand from her palms, the motion slow and deliberate. Marina watched the grains fall, catching briefly on Isabelle's skin before disappearing. She had the strange urge to reach out, to mirror the gesture, to brush something invisible away. Instead, she folded her wax paper again, then again, creasing it until it held its shape. "Where'd you come from?" Marina asked, the question escaping before she decided to ask it. Isabelle glanced at her, surprised and thoughtful. Out north, city most of the time. Marina nodded, as if that answered something essential. You don't seem like it. Like what? Like you belong there, Marina said, and only realized what she'd implied when Isabelle laughed softly. Maybe I don't, she said. Not defensively. Not sadly. Just as a fact. The word settled between them, unclaimed. A shout went up from farther down the beach. Someone calling for a towel. Someone else responding with mock annoyance. A frisbee sailed briefly into view, then out again. Life continued, careless and loud, while something quieter tightened inside Marina's chest. She became aware of her body in pieces, the press of sand against her calves, the pull of her swimsuit strap against sun-warmed skin, the way her breath seemed shallower than usual. She told herself to relax. She told herself nothing was happening. Isabelle leaned back on her hands, face tilted toward the sky. Looks like rain. Marina followed her gaze. The clouds were darker now, layered and heavy, the light shifting in a way that made everything feel suspended. She felt a flicker of anticipation she couldn't place. Yeah, she said. It does. Isabelle turned her head, eyes catching Marina's again. This time neither of them looked away. The moment stretched, not dramatic, not charged in any obvious way, just full. Marina had the sense that if she moved, if she spoke, something would change. She stayed still. Isabelle's gaze dropped, not in retreat, but as if she were tracing something. Marina's shoulder, the line of her arm, the place where her hand rested against her knee. When she looked back up, there was care there. Deliberate, measured. Marina swallowed. The wind rose again, stronger now, tugging at her hair with more insistence. Without thinking, Isabelle reached out, fingers gentle, and tucked the loose strand behind Marina's ear. Touch was brief, almost nothing, but it landed with a weight Marina felt all the way down her spine. Sorry, Isabelle said, already pulling back. Habit. Marina's skin hummed where Isabelle's fingers had been. She lifted her own hand, touching the same place, as if to confirm it had happened. It's fine, she said, though her voice sounded different to her own ears. Lower, less certain. The first drops of rain fell, sudden and sharp, darkening the sand in scattered marks. Someone groaned theatrically. Towels were grabbed, bags hastily zipped. The easy sprawl of the afternoon began to contract. Marina stood, brushing sand from her legs, movement slightly unsteady. Isabelle rose beside her, close enough that their arms brushed. Marina felt the contact like a question she didn't know how to answer. They started walking back toward the cluster of people, the rain intensifying with each step. Marina's heart beat faster, not from exertion, but from the strange sense that she was approaching an edge. As they reached the others, Isabelle slowed, falling into step with Marina. Their shoulders touched again, then stayed that way uncorrected. Marina didn't move away. She told herself it was just rain, just proximity, just a moment. But the thought kept circling, insistent and unfinished. Something has already begun, and she didn't know yet whether she was afraid of where it might lead, or of how much she wanted to follow. Rain had a way of rearranging things without asking. By the time Marina registered how soaked her hair was, it was already plastered to her neck, the thin cotton of her shirt darkening, clinging. The laughter around them sharpened into movement, people grabbing bags, swearing lightly, half running back toward the path that led up the beach. The sky had dropped closer, heavy and insistent. Isabelle stayed near her, not in a way that announced itself. Just close enough that Marina felt less alone in the sudden shift from ease to urgency. A shared glance passed between them, quick, knowing. The kind people exchange when something small has already aligned. They followed the others inland, the sand turning slick beneath their feet. Marina adjusted her pace unconsciously to match Isabelle's. It felt natural, which unsettled her more than anything else. The path narrowed as it climbed, framed by scrub and rock. Rain struck leaves, the sound dense and enveloping. Someone ahead called out a joke that got lost halfway through. The group stretched, compressed, then stretched again, each person reacting to the weather in their own distracted way. Isabelle glanced back at Marina. "You okay walking?" Marina nodded, though the ground tilted slightly under her step. "Yeah, just slippery." Isabelle slowed a fraction, close enough now that if Marina stumbled, she would fall into her. The thought didn't alarm her. It steadied her. They reached a bend where the path curved sharply, rock wall on one side, a steep drop on the other. The rain intensified, sudden and forceful, and someone shouted that they should wait it out. The group hesitated, uncertain. "Is there cover?" someone asked. Isabelle scanned the rock face, eyes narrowing. "There might be," she said, then caught Marina's look. "If you're okay with it." The question landed gently. Marina felt it register somewhere deeper than choice. "Yeah," she said. "Okay." They moved off the path together, slipping between rocks slick with rain, following Isabelle's sure-footed lead. Marina noticed the way Isabelle placed her feet, deliberate, careful. She offered a hand without ceremony when the ground dipped sharply. Marina took it. Isabelle's grip was firm, warm despite the rain. Not pulling, not pushing, just there. Marina felt the contact travel up her arm, settle in her chest. She told herself it was adrenaline. She didn't let go right away. The others disappeared behind them, voices muffled, footsteps fading. The world narrowed to rock, rain, breath. The cave mouth appeared suddenly, half hidden by trailing greenery and shadow. Narrow, but deep enough to shelter them. Isabelle ducked inside first, tugging Marina gently after her. The temperature dropped immediately. The air smelled of wet stone and salt, clean and old. Rain drummed against the rock outside, a steady enclosing sound. The light filtered in unevenly, silvered and fractured. They stood there for a moment, catching their breath. Marina laughed then, a soft, breathless sound she hadn't planned. "Well," she said, "that's dramatic." Isabelle smiled, wider this time. "Nature has timing." They shrugged off what they could. Jackets laid carefully on the stone floor, shoes set aside. Isabelle spread her jacket flat and gestured for Marina to sit. Marina hesitated, then did, the cold rock seeping through the fabric. Isabelle sat opposite her, knees drawn up, close enough that their toes nearly touched. The space was intimate by necessity, the walls pressing in just enough to make distance impossible without effort. The rain filled the silence, a constant, immersive presence. Marina became acutely aware of everything. The sound of Isabelle's breathing, the way damp hair clung to her collarbone, the faint shiver that passed through her when the wind shifted outside. She folded her arms around herself, unsure whether she was cold or simply overwhelmed. Isabelle noticed. She reached for her jacket, hesitated, then placed it gently over Marina's shoulders instead. The fabric was still warm from her body. "Here," she said. "You're shaking." Marina wanted to argue. Instead, she pulled the jacket closer, inhaling without meaning to. It smelled faintly of soap and something else, something skin-warm and specific. "Thanks," she said quietly. Isabelle didn't move back to her own jacket. She stayed where she was, close, her knee brushing Marina's. The contact lingered uncorrected. They sat like that, saying nothing, the rain holding them in place. Time behaved strangely inside the cave. Marina had the sense that minutes were stretching, folding back on themselves. She thought of her boyfriend, how she described him earlier without detail, without heat. How the word boyfriend itself felt suddenly inaccurate, like a placeholder she'd been too tired to replace. The thought didn't bring guilt so much as clarity, sharp and unwelcome. Isabelle watched the rain as if it were a story unfolding. "It always feels different in places like this," she said. "Like you're allowed to pause." Marina nodded. "Like time doesn't apply. Or like it's finally honest," Isabelle said. The words struck something tender. Marina swallowed. "You always talk like that?" Isabelle smiled, a little self-conscious. "Only when I forget to stop myself." Marina studied her face in the fractured light. There were lines there she hadn't noticed before, not age exactly, but experience. A way of holding herself that suggested she'd learned when to stay quiet and when not to. "What about you?" Isabelle asked gently. "Do you ever pause?" Marina laughed softly, shaking her head. "I don't think I know how." The admission surprised her with its truth. They fell silent again. The rain intensified, wind howling briefly at the cave mouth. Marina flinched, instinctively reaching out. Isabelle's hand was already there, steadying her by the wrist. "I've got you," Isabelle said without thinking. The words landed heavily. Marina felt her chest tighten, something opening she hadn't prepared for. She looked at their joined hands, Isabelle's thumb resting lightly against her pulse. The touch wasn't dramatic. It was careful, intentional. Marina didn't pull away. She became aware of her own breath, uneven now. The closeness sharpened every sensation. The warmth of Isabelle's hand, the brush of her knee, the shared air. Desire surfaced not as urgency but as recognition, slow and undeniable. Isabelle seemed to sense it. Her grip loosened, giving Marina space without withdrawing. "Hey," she said softly. "You don't have to." "I know," Marina interrupted, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I just want to stay." Isabelle nodded. No pressure, no relief, just acceptance. They shifted slightly, closer now, sharing the jacket. Marina leaned back against the rock, Isabelle's shoulder warm against hers. The contact felt inevitable, like gravity. Marina's thoughts circled, growing more specific, more insistent. She thought of how long she'd been skimming the surface of her own life, mistaking safety for fulfillment. She thought of how Isabelle's presence felt like permission without demand. She wondered when exactly things had started to tilt. Outside, the rain began to soften. The drum faded to a gentler rhythm. Voices drifted faintly from the path above, someone calling their names, distant and unconcerned. "Sounds like they're looking for us," Isabelle said, not moving. "Yeah," Marina replied. Neither of them stood. Isabelle traced a small, unconscious pattern on the back of Marina's hand with her thumb. The gesture repeated, absent-minded, grounding. Marina focused on it, letting the sensation anchor her. The world would resume soon. She could feel it approaching. But inside the cave, inside this suspended moment, something had already shifted. Not broken, not decided, just tilted. And the thought that kept returning, steady and unsettling, was this. Whatever she'd been holding herself away from, it was closer now than she'd ever allowed. The cave did not feel the same when Marina opened her eyes again. Nothing visible had changed. The light still slipped in through the narrow opening in pale, uncertain bands. The rain still whispered against stone, softer now, but steady. Isabelle's shoulder was still warm against hers. And yet Marina's awareness had sharpened, as if something inside her had been tuned too precisely, every sensation arriving louder than before. She noticed the way Isabelle breathed. Not just that she breathed, but the pattern of it. The pause between inhale and exhale. The way her chest lifted, then settled. Marina found herself matching it without realizing, their bodies quietly negotiating a shared rhythm. She stayed very still. There was a new care in her stillness. Not fear exactly. Attention. They had been quiet for a long time. Long enough that the silence had taken on texture. Marina could feel it pressing gently against her thoughts, encouraging them to slow, to stop racing ahead. For once, she let it. Isabelle shifted slightly, the movement small but deliberate. Her knee brushed Marina's again. This time, neither of them pretended it was accidental. "I think the rain's easing," Isabelle said softly. Marina nodded, though she hadn't been listening for it. "Yeah." She didn't move. Isabelle tilted her head, studying the opening of the cave as if gauging the truth of her own words. Marina watched her profile instead. The curve of her cheek, the concentration there, the quiet patience in the way she held herself. There was nothing performative about her presence. That was what made it so hard to look away. Marina became aware of her own hand resting between them, palm down on the stone. She flexed her fingers once, then stilled them again, as if testing whether she was allowed to exist this way. Isabelle's gaze dropped. It didn't dart. It didn't linger in a way that felt invasive. It simply acknowledged the space between them, the hands, the closeness, the shared jacket slipping slightly from Marina's shoulder. Marina felt a heat rise under her skin, slow and unmistakable. She thought distantly of how many times she'd felt this before with men and dismissed it as nerves, as anticipation, as the necessary friction of attraction. This felt different. Quieter. More precise. Like something aligning instead of colliding. Isabelle spoke again, her voice careful. Marina. Just her name. Nothing attached to it. Marina turned to face her fully. The movement brought them closer. Close enough that Marina could feel the warmth of Isabelle's breath when she spoke again. You don't have to stay if you don't want to, Isabelle said. I mean, here, with me. I don't want to be. I know, Marina said too quickly. She paused, recalibrated. I want to. The words surprised her with how little resistance they met on the way out. Isabelle searched her face. Marina let herself be searched. She didn't fill the space with explanation. She didn't rush to soften what she'd said. I don't know what this means, Marina added quietly. But I know I don't want to pretend I don't feel it. Isabelle exhaled, slow and controlled. Relief flickered there, brief and carefully contained. Okay, she said. Then we go slow. Marina nodded. Please. They didn't touch right away. That restraint did something to Marina, heightened her awareness, sharpened her desire, until it felt almost luminous. She noticed the way Isabelle's fingers curled loosely at her side, the tension held there. The way her mouth parted slightly, then closed again, as if holding back words. The cave seemed to hold its breath with them. It was Marina who moved first, though later she wouldn't remember deciding to. She shifted closer, reducing the small distance between their bodies until their thighs pressed together fully. The contact sent a quiet shock through her, immediate and grounding. Isabelle didn't pull away. She adjusted instead, aligning herself more carefully, her knee fitting against Marina's like it had always known where to go. Marina lifted her hand slowly, giving Isabelle time to stop her. She didn't. Marina's fingers brushed Isabelle's sleeve first, testing, asking. Then her wrist. The warmth there felt astonishingly intimate. Isabelle's eyes darkened, her focus narrowing. She nodded once. Marina rested her palm against Isabelle's forearm, feeling the muscle there, the solidity. Her own breath faltered. She became acutely aware of her body, how awake it felt, how responsive, how undeniable. Isabelle leaned in just slightly, enough that Marina could feel the promise of contact without yet receiving it. The closeness vibrated. Tell me if you want me to stop, Isabelle said, her voice barely above the rain. Marina swallowed. I won't want you to. The words landed between them with quiet finality. Isabelle closed the remaining distance, her forehead resting gently against Marina's. They stayed like that, breathing each other in. Marina felt the world narrow to this single point of contact, bone to bone, warmth to warmth. When Isabelle kissed her, it was not urgent. It was careful, intentional. Her mouth brushed Marina's once, softly, then again lingering just long enough to ask. Marina answered by leaning in, her lips parting, her body responding before her thoughts could interfere. The kiss deepened slowly, unfolding rather than escalating. Marina felt herself soften into it, her hand sliding up Isabelle's arm to her shoulder, fingers curling into the damp fabric of her shirt. She felt something give inside her, not dramatically, not painfully. Just a quiet release of tension she hadn't known she was carrying. Isabelle's hand came to rest at Marina's waist, warm and grounding. She held there, steady, as if anchoring Marina in the moment. The touch sent a ripple through her, settling low and insistent. Marina pulled back just enough to breathe, her forehead still touching Isabelle's. She laughed softly, breathless. I know, Isabelle murmured. You don't have to explain. The understanding there undid her more than the kiss had. They shifted again, closer still, the jacket slipping further as they adjusted. Marina felt the stone wall behind her, cool against her back, Isabelle's body warm in contrast. The sensation grounded her fully in her physical self. What followed was not rushed, not chaotic. It unfolded in quiet increments, hands exploring with reverence, pauses taken to check, to breathe, to recalibrate. Marina felt herself learning her own responses in real time, surprised by the depth of her pleasure, the clarity of it. It wasn't just desire, it was recognition. She stayed present through it all. The brush of skin, the shared breath, the way Isabelle seemed to listen with her entire body. Marina had never felt so unfragmented, so wholly herself in another's presence. When they finally stilled, bodies close, foreheads touching again, Marina felt unmoored. Not emptied, but expanded. As if something essential had been named without words. Outside, voices drifted closer now, clearer. Footsteps crunched on gravel above the cave. The world was reasserting itself. Isabelle leaned back slightly, giving Marina space without withdrawing entirely. Her expression was open, searching. Marina met her gaze, heart pounding. She felt exposed in a way that frightened and thrilled her in equal measure. "I can't unfeel this," Marina said softly. Isabelle nodded. "Neither can I." The rain had nearly stopped. Light shifted at the cave mouth, brighter now. Time was moving again, insistently. Marina knew, without yet understanding how, that whatever she stepped back into would no longer fit the way it once had. The thought didn't bring clarity. It brought vertigo. She stayed where she was for a moment longer, breathing in the aftermath, the echo of what had just occurred reverberating through her body. Nothing had ended. Something irreversible had begun. The world returned too quickly. Marina felt it in the way the light sharpened at the cave mouth, in the way the air shifted from private to exposed. The silence between her and Isabelle changed texture, not empty, but careful, weighted, as if both of them were suddenly aware that what they had touched could not be gathered back into something harmless. They moved apart slowly, not abruptly, not with regret, just enough to acknowledge that the space between them had acquired meaning. Isabelle reached for her jacket, hesitated, then folded it once before handing it back. Their fingers brushed, brief restrained, and the contact sent a muted pulse through Marina's body, more ache than heat now. "Here," Isabelle said. Marina took it, nodding. She didn't trust her voice yet. They sat side by side instead of facing each other, shoulders aligned, but not touching. The cave felt different in this configuration, less like a shelter, more like a threshold. Outside, footsteps paused. Someone laughed. The sound felt strangely invasive, as if it were entering a room it didn't belong in. Marina's chest tightened. She was suddenly acutely aware of the life she would be stepping back into. The version of herself waiting on the other side of this moment, the one who answered messages without thinking, who smoothed things over before they had a chance to become complicated. The one who called stability love because it was easier than asking harder questions. Her phone vibrated again in her bag. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. Isabelle noticed anyway. Marina could feel it. The shift in Isabelle's attention, the way her body stilled. She didn't ask. That restraint felt both kind and unbearable. They waited until the voices faded again, until the world gave them a little room. "I don't want to make this harder for you," Isabelle said finally. The words landed carefully, deliberately neutral. Marina swallowed. "It already is." Isabelle turned to look at her then. Really look. There was no accusation there. No disappointment. Just clarity. "I meant," Isabelle continued, choosing her words, "I don't want to be something you have to explain away." Marina closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, the cave seemed brighter, harsher. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. The truth felt raw on her tongue. "I've never let myself want something that changes everything." Isabelle nodded slowly. I know. That was the problem. She knew. They gathered their things in quiet coordination. Shoes slipped back on, damp and uncomfortable. Hair was pushed back, then fell loose again. Ordinary motions, suddenly fragile with meaning. When they stepped out of the cave, the world greeted them without ceremony. The rain had stopped entirely. The beach looked rinsed, colors sharpened. The ocean resumed its steady breathing, unconcerned. Farther up the path, the group waited. Some sitting on rocks, others pacing, all of them already halfway back to their own conversations. Hey, someone called. There you are. Marina raised a hand automatically. Her smile came easily, practiced. It startled her how intact it looked. Isabelle stayed close but not touching as they rejoined the others. Close enough that Marina felt her presence like a held breath. They walked back together, the group loosely reforming, conversation resuming in fragments. Someone complained about wet socks. Someone else joked about nearly getting stranded. Life pressed forward, indifferent to what had been rearranged beneath the surface. Marina answered when spoken to. She laughed in the right places. She felt slightly dissociated, as if she were watching herself from just behind her own eyes. Every so often, she felt Isabelle's gaze flick toward her, checking. Marina didn't look back. Not yet. At the rental house they scattered, people claiming towels, changing clothes, searching for dry things. The chaos was comforting in its familiarity. Marina stood in the doorway of the bathroom, jacket still draped over her arm, unsure where to go next. Isabelle passed behind her, close enough that Marina caught her scent again. Soap, salt, something quietly grounding. Their eyes met in the mirror. Just for a second. Isabelle looked away first. The distance that followed felt heavier than any argument could have. Later, they sat on opposite ends of the living room. The group gathered around takeout containers and mismatched plates. Marina picked at her food without tasting it. Isabelle listened more than she spoke, her attention outward, her posture composed. Nothing was wrong. That was the worst part. Marina felt the absence of touch acutely, the lack of Isabelle's knee against hers, the missing warmth at her side. Her body remembered what her life did not yet have room for. She wondered how long that memory would last, if it would dull with time, soften into something manageable. Thought scared her more than permanence. As evening settled, people drifted off, showers taken, messages sent, plans made for the next day. Marina found herself on the back porch, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, watching the sky darken. Isabelle joined her a few minutes later, standing a careful distance away. Neither of them spoke right away. The silence stretched, not empty, but full of everything they weren't saying. I leave tomorrow, Isabelle said eventually. Marina's breath caught. She nodded, as if she'd known. Yeah. Another pause. I don't regret today, Isabelle added. I just need to know it mattered. Marina turned to face her fully. The porch light cast Isabelle's face in soft shadow, familiar now in a way that felt dangerous. It did, Marina said without hesitation. It does. Isabelle studied her, searching for something, certainty, maybe. Marina couldn't offer that. Not yet. They stood there, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to maintain the fragile line they'd drawn. Marina felt herself balancing on it. She knew a choice was waiting. Not immediate, not loud, but inevitable. For now, she stayed still, letting the weight of it settle into her bones, knowing that whatever she decided next would cost her something. She just didn't know yet what she was willing to lose. Marina did not sleep. She lay on her back in the unfamiliar bed, the ceiling fan turning slow, uneven circles above her, the air carrying the faint residue of salt and rain. The house breathed around her, pipes settling, a door closing somewhere down the hall, someone laughing softly and then stopping. Every sound felt slightly out of sync, as if the world were continuing a half-beat ahead of her. Her phone lay face down on the nightstand. She had turned it over twice already. Each time she told herself she would look. Each time she didn't. The weight of it, messages waiting, a name that carried years of shared habits, felt heavier than the device itself. What pressed most insistently was not fear, exactly. It was clarity forming without her consent. She closed her eyes and the cave returned to her body before it returned to her mind. Not as images, not as scenes, but as sensation. The exact warmth of Isabelle's hand at her waist, the steadiness there. The way her own breath had found a rhythm that felt finally honest. The absence of performance, presence of care. She rolled onto her side, curling slightly inward, as if bracing against a tide. She had always thought desire was loud when it mattered. She had been wrong. This had been quiet, precise. It had rearranged her from the inside out. At some point the fan stopped. The silence deepened. Marina stared at the dark until it softened, until it no longer demanded answers. By morning the house smelled like coffee. She followed the sound downstairs, moving slowly, deliberately. She hadn't decided anything yet, but something in her had shifted from resistance to listening. Isabelle stood at the counter, barefoot, hair still damp from a shower. She wore a borrowed t-shirt that hung loosely from her shoulders, the hem brushing her thighs. She moved with the same unassuming certainty Marina had noticed from the beginning, as if she trusted the ground to meet her where she stepped. The sight of her landed gently and completely. "Morning?" Isabelle said, without turning around. Marina paused in the doorway. "Morning." There was no awkwardness in the word, just acknowledgement. Isabelle poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, sliding one across the counter before Marina had to ask. Marina took it, her fingers brushing Isabelle's briefly. The contact was small, familiar now. They stood there side by side, sipping in silence. The kitchen light was too bright, the countertops cluttered with the casual aftermath of people living together for a weekend. Nothing about the space was romantic. That felt important. "I'm heading out after breakfast," Isabelle said quietly. Marina nodded. "Yeah, I figured." The thought didn't hollow her out the way she'd expected. It steadied her instead, sharpening her awareness of the moment they were in. They moved around each other easily, Isabelle rinsing a mug, Marina opening a window. The breeze carried in a smell of wet earth and ocean, a reminder of yesterday that felt strangely tender. Marina leaned against the counter, watching Isabelle dry her hands on a towel. The repeated gesture, the careful way she folded the fabric, the way she smoothed it once before hanging it, caught Marina's attention. Felt like a signature, a way of being. "I need to say something," Marina said. Isabelle turned to face her, attentive without urgency. "Okay." Marina took a breath. She let it out slowly. "I'm not good at sudden clarity," she said. "I tend to talk myself out of things before they finish arriving." Isabelle's expression didn't change. She waited. "What happened yesterday," Marina continued, "wasn't a break from who I am. It was the opposite." She stopped, the words pressing against something vulnerable. She felt the familiar instinct to soften, to hedge. She resisted it. "I don't want to go back to pretending it didn't tell me something true." Isabelle's eyes held hers, steady and open. "What did it tell you?" Marina swallowed. She placed her mug down, hands suddenly unsteady. "That I've been choosing comfort over honesty. That I've been living adjacent to my own life." She laughed softly, without humor. "That I've been straight because it was easier, not because it was real." The admission landed between them, quiet and irreversible. Isabelle exhaled, not in relief, but in recognition. "And what do you want now?" Marina closed her eyes for a moment. The answer was already there. It had been there since the cave. Since before that, probably, waiting patiently for permission. "I want to stop lying," she said. "To myself, most of all." Isabelle stepped closer, not touching yet. "That's a beginning," she said. "It's all I have," Marina replied. They stood there, the space between them charged not with urgency but with consequence. Marina felt the familiar pull of fear, of disruption, of loss. She felt it fully, then let it pass through her instead of stopping her. "I can't promise I know how to do this gracefully," Marina said. "Or quickly." Isabelle smiled, small and real. I'm not in a hurry. That was when Marina moved. She closed the remaining distance without ceremony, resting her forehead against Isabelle's. The contact felt like coming home to a body she'd forgotten was hers. Isabelle's hands came up slowly, resting at Marina's hips, grounding her there. They stayed like that, breathing together, letting the choice settle into their bodies before their minds caught up. When Isabelle kissed her, it was different from before. Not exploratory, not tentative. It carried the weight of decision, not dramatic, but deliberate. Marina felt it registered deep and steady, a warmth that didn't flicker or rush. They broke apart only when someone entered the kitchen, asking about plans for the day. The interruption felt almost gentle. Later, they packed. Suitcases opened and closed. Clothes folded and unfolded again. The mundane choreography of departure unfolded around them. Marina moved through it with a new attentiveness, noticing how Isabelle paused before zipping her bag, how she checked the room once more before leaving, as if making sure nothing essential had been left behind. On the porch, bags at their feet, they stood close without touching. "I'm not asking you to decide everything today," Isabelle said. "Just don't disappear." Marina met her gaze. "I won't." The promise felt solid. Not romantic. Real. They hugged then, not hurried, not restrained. Marina felt Isabelle's arms around her, the steady pressure, the simple truth of contact. She breathed in deeply, anchoring the sensation, knowing she would need it later. When Isabelle stepped away, Marina felt the absence keenly, but not painfully. It felt like space, not loss. She watched Isabelle walk down the path, suitcase rolling behind her, posture easy. The world didn't pause. A car door slammed. Someone called goodbye. The ocean kept breathing. Marina stayed on the porch long after Isabelle was gone. She took out her phone. This time she turned it over. The message waiting was familiar. Expected. She read it once, then again. The words felt suddenly distant, as if written for someone she no longer was. She typed slowly, deliberately. She didn't explain everything. She didn't need to. She told the truth she had. That was enough. When she put the phone down, her hands were shaking. She went back inside, helped clean up, laughed when someone made a joke. Life resumed, not unchanged, but continuous. The difference was internal, profound. That night, alone again, Marina stood on the beach. The tide was low, the sand cool beneath her feet. She faced the ocean, letting the sound of it wash through her. She thought of the cave, not as a place, but as a moment of recognition. A threshold she had crossed and could not return from. She touched the place behind her ear where Isabelle's fingers had rested the day before. The gesture repeated, grounding her. She felt something settle. Not certainty, not resolution. Permanence. A quiet knowing that whatever came next would be lived from a truer place. That she would no longer mistake safety for belonging. That desire, when honored, could be both gentle and life-altering. The night held her there unhurried. And for the first time, Marina felt ready to step fully into herself without looking away. Some truths don't announce themselves. They wait patiently until we are brave enough to stay. What part of yourself have you been protecting by calling it safety? If this story touched your heart, share your truth in the comments. And if this journey stayed with you, please consider subscribing to Secret Garden Stories, leaving a comment, and sharing it with friends, forums, and social media. Your support helps this channel grow and build a world with more love and less prejudice. Thank you for being here.